issues in the economy. So we have the Director General, Mr. Diwali Oyerinde, joining us. Good morning, Mr. Oyerinde. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
The last time we spoke to you, you were not in Nigeria. How was your trip back?
Very well. Well, we thank God for a good outing at the ILO Governing Board meeting.
I remember one of the questions I asked you then was, what are you bringing back after all of the meetings? You know, what difference will it make? But I mean, let's not get distracted because we have really burning issues now.
Absolutely.
NECA has been talking a whole lot about what's going on in the country. Obviously, because you're speaking from the perspective of employers and your employee who are affected directly by all of this. And top on the list is the last one you talked about was the proposed strike by NLC, and you seem not to be happy with that proposal.
Well, for us, while the NLC has its mandate, has its prerogative, and one of those is the protection of workers. Workers' interest is paramount within the context of what the NLC will do. And from our perspective, also the protection of the enterprises is also one of our core mandates. While you can't separate one from the other, so the need for both of them to work together. As you protect the enterprises, you are invariably protecting the employees. As you protect the employees, you are also invariably protecting the employers. So for us, it's more like sounding a note of caution to say while the situation is bad, the economy is suffering from the actions of the CBN, we feel also that the strike at this point might also be a bit of counterproductive. So rather than go the whole hog of downing the economy, we would rather preach social dialogue, that we keep dialoguing, that we keep talking about it, because the private sector is bleeding basically now. Businesses are closing down. Businesses are operating under very low capacity utilization levels. And the need for us to explore maximally social dialogue is more important now. Also, at the ILO Governing Board meeting, one of the key issues that played out is the power of social dialogue. We can achieve more through building consensus. And thank God the CBN has responded expressly as we advise, as we urge. Whether it was in response to the NLC's threat, we wouldn't want to go to that discussion. But the most important thing is that everybody has responded. NLC has made this call. NECA has also urged caution, and the CBN has taken a cue and also taken very drastic action, which is positive.
So, I mean, following the weekend banking we saw this past 2 days, have you noticed changes? Have you had conversations with individuals? Is there cash now? Is the situation better? Well,
you don't expect an immediate and instantaneous. It's not like a flip, that you flip the coin and everywhere is good and rosy again. The process was transitory when everybody had to deposit their cash in the bank. There was a process. We all went to the bank to queue, and then somewhere along the line we find ourselves going back to the bank again, reversing that process. So the same process that you used in going to deposit your cash in the bank, probably might not spend the same hours. But the most important thing is that action has been taken. The Saturday and Sunday banking is quite commendable. We think it's good thinking. If we had thought about all this before, if we had tried to build consensus around the issue of the Naira redesign, we wouldn't have come to this point of wasting man-hour, people going to the bank on Saturday and on Sunday times that they are supposed to use to recover from the week-long work. So it's quite unfortunate, and part of the issues we've raised is for us to deal with those inherent contradictions in our system, and that's one of them that is playing out. We rushed out with a process that was beautiful, that's supposed to be laudable, that's supposed to take us another step towards financial inclusiveness for our people. And because we didn't handle it well, we are now reversing the whole process. The man-hour that has been spent even by the CBN eggheads that have been meeting to fashion out these policies, the man-hour that was spent by Nigerians going to queue to deposit their cash, then looking for cash, the crisis, inherent crisis, self-inflicted crisis that we caused by the fight in some areas in the country because people don't have access to their cash, the embarrassment we caused ourselves as a nation because we couldn't deal with just what we call minor issues. And now we have reversed all those processes. So the cash that we couldn't give people before, we are now, in an emergency.
There's even the fear of, with so much money now being pumped back into the economy, inflation is already at 21.91%. There's the fear of, this much more cash feeding into inflation again.
That is debatable because really, for you to grow, you must create a system where production is not breached. So production, no matter what level, either at the local level, at the micro or macro level, production must continue and consumption must continue. It has basic, simple economics. So if you short-circuit production or you short-circuit consumption, then you've created a breach that will affect your economy on the whole. So what we did was, in the attempt to come up with a laudable policy, as we call it, we breached production. And we also breached consumption, which caused a stalemate even our development. So the issue of Nigeria being oversaturated with Naira, experts have said it's debatable that Nigeria is not. Within the context of comparison, global comparison, the quantum of Naira that we have in the economy is not enough to cause us crisis. So we should desist from just calling a dog a bad name in order to hang it.
All right, so we have this, we have inflation, we have the after effects of the cash crunch, we have issues of insecurity, we have issues of unemployment, we have all of this waiting for the incoming administration. As NECA, how do we move forward? You did talk about the issue of dialogue. Yeah. Even in the introduction of the redesigned Naira, a lot of people have said there was not enough dialogue.
Absolutely.
As NECA, what are you doing? You have a place to fill. It's a private sector-driven economy. At least that's what it's supposed to be in Nigeria. Yeah. And a lot of people believe that the president-elect is pro-private sector. What are you guys doing as NECA to push this forward and ensure that we do not go back, to where we're coming from?
Well, the incoming, the president-elect, as you say, is pro-private sector, and it is led for us to see in the context of implementation of the policies that the government will come up with. At the level of NECA, at the level of the organized private sector of Nigeria, where we have NECA, we have Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, we have NASIMA, we have NASME, we have NASI. We've come up with an agenda for the incoming government. And beyond the agenda, as I said, the problems are multifaceted. And you take a multifaceted approach, leveraging on building national consensus. There are so many issues on ground, so many challenges. It will be unfortunate if the incoming government or personnel of the government feel they can resolve those issues by just coming up with policies. Whatever policy you come up with, you need to build a national consensus around that policy. You need to get the citizens around. You need to get the private sector behind those policies. Because whatever policy you create, those policies are not to operate in isolation. You are creating them for individuals, for businesses to operate. So it is advisable that when you're coming up with those policies, at the point of crafting those policies, at the point of implementing those policies, at the point of reviewing those policies, that you get the private sector involved in those policies. Because as I said, globally, for every 10 jobs, the private sector creates at least 8 of those jobs. So if you want to deal with the issue of unemployment, you want to deal with the issue of revenue shortages, you want to deal with the issue of foreign direct investment, your best ally is the private sector. So we've shared this communication with the incoming government, with their officers, and we'll continue to share our perspective on how to take Nigeria to the next level. The Nigerian project is our project. It's not really the government project. All Nigerians must line up, they must seek the concurrence of all Nigerians so that we can take ourselves out of this self-inflicted quagmire.
So Nigeria is never, I don't think has ever been lack of policy, even good policies. But the issue has been implementation of it. Now, when you talk of national dialogue, national unity, it could sound vague, you know. What would be the practical steps you expect to see, you know, from the incoming administration, from the president-elect, you know, to give you assurance that, oh, this is more than what we used to have, which is always on paper. You know, we have the good policies on paper, we have the good ideas on paper,
Absolutely.
and we hardly see it, you know, materialize.
Absolutely.
What would be those practical steps? Is it sit down with members of MAN or NECA, talk about this, and then after this, we see you move? You know, what are those practical steps?
I think first, let me. You mentioned national unity. You know, national unity is a cliche for politicians. So we'll drop the context of national unity for them to play with. But for us, two things will be very important. You know, two things amongst many other important things. One will be, first, is the caliber of the cabinet. The caliber of the cabinet is the first pointer to know whether we are serious or not. You know, we want people that are technocrats with very viable experience. They might not be doctors, they might not be professors, but people that have shown through their antecedents that they can run a business, they can manage a project, they can manage an enterprise. That is the first. If you mix it at the point of who adds worth, then no matter how beautiful your policy is, you've lost it in the first place. So once we deal with the context of who adds worth, you know, you've dealt with the main an issue that can fundamentally affect where you are going. Then the second point will be, now let's now sit down, as we have urged severally, that whatever policy is coming up with, we are coming up with. I said the problems are multifaceted. Then let there be a consensus between the policy, those that are crafting the policy, those that the policy will affect, and those that will supervise the policies. If you create a consensus between them, or an alignment for a more appropriate word, then we have positioned ourselves not only to implement those policies, but to jointly, continually review those policies. When they are not working, then we can review. One of my mentors said, you know, it is better to be inconsistent than to persist in error. Over time, what we have seen is government policies, when they realize it's erroneous, it's not working, rather than be humble and let's reverse this policy, let's review it jointly. Then you see them coming up with different data, different pronouncements to say it's working, this is doing this, this is doing that, which is not really true. So our position is this: get the right men for the job. And we are, the president-elect said it will be government of competence, not of national unity, which is probably a first place to start. Get competent people. We have them in Nigeria. We have them outside this Nigeria. Nigeria doing great and wonderful things outside this country. Why are they working there? And when they come into our system, they become handicapped. We must deal with that, and then deal with the issue of building that consensus, that national consensus between all operatives of the government, and then the private sector, and then all other stakeholders in this economy. That is the direction I think we should go, amongst many other directions.
Okay, these are the first steps that Nigeria Employers Consultative Association would like to see. Thank you so much, Director General Adewale Oyerinde, for your time this morning.
Thank you.